Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon. You can find my fifth book that came out as a bestseller, Raised by These Wolves, Volume 3, Family and Juvenile Courts Continue to Destroy Future Generations. I have two brand new guests on. I have Benjamin Thomas. He is a victim of the District of Columbia Family Courts and best-selling author of the Revelation Riddle Trilogy and speaker on faith topics, as well as Tony Pellegrino, founder and coach of the American Common Law Academy, which was co-founded in 2016 in Boise, Idaho. And we have a lot to talk about because we're focusing on raising awareness about family court corruption and Save the Family's federal constitutional challenge, specifically, number one, the constitutional use of jurisdiction, and number two, the silver bullet of civil protection orders, CPOs, and three, Compelled Rule 35, which are mental exams. We have a lot to cover and talk about. I welcome you both, Benjamin Thomas and Tony Pellegrino. Thank you for coming on Slam the Gavel. How are you?
Hi,
Great
good,
to be
good.
here. Great to be here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. I got to see you in court the other day. I was court watching.
Well, I saw this woman up there and I thought she was knitting or crocheting. And I was like, who is that? And so I'm happy to find out it was you, a friendly.
I was glad to see that because I can see that the state is trying to run our family life and take our children.
Yes, it's really something else. I didn't know much about family court, as we said before the show, until two Metropolitan Police, uh, you know, uh, came into my home, my paid-for home in Capitol Hill in January of 2025, and said, "You need to leave now." And I said, "Okay, what are the charges?" And they said, "We can't tell you." I said, "Well, do you have a warrant?" No. I said, "Well, I need to call my attorney." Doesn't work that way. And I said, "Well, I'm not leaving my home unless you show me something." And they
Mhm.
showed me a judge's order that was basically a temporary protective order. And they said, how long is it going to take you to get out of your home? And meanwhile, I had two small boys. This is a home I paid for in cash, and I'm out. And I haven't been back to that house since. I haven't seen my oldest son in a year. And, that was my introduction to family court. It was a crash course. It happened very quickly, but that's the first time I'd heard of family court was a year ago or over a year ago now with this happening to me in my own home.
And what people need to realize is this can happen to anyone at any time.
It's true. And when you think about this should not be happening in America. I mean, our home should be a safe place. A home should be like, especially a home that you own, you're not even a renter, should be like really off limits to the law, especially when, I find out later that all someone has to do is go to a judge with a flimsy set of allegations,
Mhm.
no witnesses, no
Mhm.
evidence, and boom, you're on the street. And this is happening every day. In fact, the cops were kind of sheepish about it during the, walk of shame, 1 hour, pack your bags and get out of your own
Oh,
home and don't say goodbye to your kids. They were kind of like, you know what, this happens all the time. The judges give these things out like hotcakes. And what it does is it perpetuates division in our family. And, you know, um, as was explained to me by Tony and others, this is not in our Constitution where, you can be basically stripped of your gun rights, stripped of your
mhm.
home, kicked out of your own family with no due process. And so, I'm a kind of an expert now, but back then
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this happens in America. But like you said, Marianne, it happens every day.
And a lot of people don't understand it. until, like I said, it's until it happens to them and they're in for a rude awakening. And then, then they're asking for help everywhere, scrambling, and they're losing their
Scrambling.
401ks, their homes. And you've got personality disorders on the bench and running the courtroom.
Well, and
Tell me
it's
more.
yeah. Well, I like Tony to weigh in because he's seen this as well. And Tony, talk about why is this unconstitutional? What's wrong with why is this normalized practice? What's wrong with it?
Yeah, we're in an Article One court, number one, versus an Article Three constitutional court, and like Mary says, this can happen to anybody. This is why we created the academy. An ounce of prevention is better than a gallon of cure. Don't wait to get your roof on the house for the storm to come in. So we need to get educated, equipped, and empowered. And once you understand your status, standing, and jurisdiction, then you're properly prepared to assert and defend your constitutional rights because you don't have any. I should
Hmm.
say constitutional protected rights because your rights don't even come from the Constitution. They're creator endowed rights. They come from God, and so we live above the line, above privileges and immunities. So yeah, you have to assert your rights and immediately go on offense. I know that it's a scary thing because they're holding the kids hostages. You know, if you the lawyers will say if you jump through these hoops and you kiss the court's butt, you'll get to see your kids. And so, for me, I don't have any kids, so it's really hard for me to identify. You know, if someone took my dog away from me, I'd be highly upset.
Hmm.
But your own flesh and blood, it's a travesty. This is nothing new. I think we're right back in 1775 before the Revolution, where the Third Amendment says there shall be no quartering of soldiers except for prescribed by law. And so the quartering of soldiers is the redcoats would come into people's houses and start molesting their kids and taking stuff out of their house. They're a little bit more sophisticated now, but you had ministers put down their Bibles and went out and led the militia into battle against these perpetrators. And so here we are again, full circle. There's nothing new under the sun. It's time to take courage, understand your identity as one of we the people. You're a creation of God. You're created in His image. You're not created to be taken dominion and walked all over by these demonized officers of these courts. These people, their consciences are seared. Most of these judges that I see have a blank stare in their face, and I'm thinking many of these guys got to be on antidepressants because I don't know how they sleep at night. So yeah, I'm a court coach, and we need coached up if you're going to go in and present your own case because as soon as you get an attorney, you're in a tough position. You're not allowed to
Right.
speak before the court. You're not allowed to file paperwork. So I just tell people to pray for strategy, but on my end, I do the equipment. Everybody, at the end of the day, you got to be responsible for your own actions.
Right. And when a parent represents themselves, they don't know what they're walking into at all. They're not prepared to have jurisdiction thrown in their face as well as no due process. What problems did you run into with the unconstitutional use of jurisdiction?
Well, for me, and this is actually before I met Tony,
Mhm.
I knew I was in for a unique challenge. And an entrepreneur. I've started several businesses, and I've been in many courtrooms. I've been in the Delaware Chancery Court. I've been in federal bankruptcy court. I've been in state court, and I've never lost a lawsuit. But when this one came along, I knew this was something different. This was a different set of rules, and it seems unfamiliar to me. And I had some good people helping me, and they said, you know what? If you're going to win this battle, you first have to approach this as a Texan, not as a U.S. citizen. And so the first advice was get your, let this judge know who you are. Start letting the judge know before the case even gets tried, you are one of the people. You are one of we the people You expect due process in this proceeding before it even starts.
Hmm.
And you take that oath of office, and you're letting your judge know if I walk in, it is it is for because I want to have equity and I want to be treated with respect. I want to be treated as a belligerent of the court, and I'm going to be a visitor to your courtroom on special terms. And so before the thing even started, that letter had already been sent, that notice had already been sent. Now, the judge chose to ignore that. And that's what people have to be prepared for. And that's what,
Hmm.
if I got really excited about it, and then he ignored it, like, whoa, what happened here? I got ignored. Well, okay, I sent him another notice and I said, hey, I'm going to give you another chance. I think you've made a big mistake. You've trampled on my rights, and I am one of we the people, and I have rights, and you trampled on them. And then I gave him a third opportunity. The Word of God says if a brother is caught in an error, you go to him once, and then you go with another brother, and then the third time you expose it publicly. And so I really felt to give this judge three opportunities,
Hmm.
and he failed the test after three opportunities. Then it was like, okay, now it's take the gloves off, and that's about when I met Tony, and Tony gave me a roadmap for actually suing the judge in his personal capacity.
Yeah, and usually I run into very rare that many cases where people put their status up into the courts right off the get-go because it's important to start good because when you're trying to backpedal and you want to rescind your signature on something and withdraw a motion and file another one. So there's a difference between the word person and people.
Hmm.
When you're talking about constitutional rights, just not in family court. When you're talking about the, due process violations, face the right to face your accuser in a court of law, innocent before proven guilty. All these constitutional principles are being ignored because they're treating you as a corporation.
Hmm.
Corporation doesn't have First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fifth Amendment rights, Sixth Amendment rights. And it's the right of the people shall not be infringed. It's mandatory language. And we wonder why are they making us get these gun permits or why am I guilty until proven innocent? So when you declare your status that you're not an artificial person, if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, there's a definition between natural person, artificial person. And it's interesting when we start winning in courts and different, even outside of family court, the legislature starts changing definitions because the devil's in the
Hmm.
detail. But, it's the right of the people. And so to declare yourself one of the people, you got to prepare an affidavit because if it's unrebutted affidavit, it stands as truth on the record. The judge doesn't rule what's said in the courtroom. It only confirms the evidence that's on the record. And most of the times when you get an attorney, they don't have you put an affidavit, a sworn statement on the record. So you got nothing on the record.
Hmm.
And so that's something that Benjamin was all over. I looked at his paperwork. I was really impressed. He was more prepared, I think, than anybody else is. And so, because when you put that judge on notice, they have qualified immunity. But
Hmm.
after you show them how your rights are being violated, then when they ignore that, and he sent several notices, then it falls into a pattern called a doctrine called deliberate indifference. Like you told me I'm violating the law. I have an oath of office. I'm reading that you're claiming your rights and you're claiming injury, but I'm still going to ignore that and railroad you. Now the judge's house is up for grabs because you're suing
Hmm.
him in his private capacity.
And yeah, and that's what needs to happen. They all think they're immune. I think that is coming to an end at some point very, very soon. That's my opinion.
There is a movement. There is a movement swelling. There's a giant wave forming right now. And people are getting vocal and standing up. And that's what we need to do. I encourage everybody that's in family court to put their judge on notice. And when it's ignored, sue the judge.
Yeah.
Sue your family court judge.
I
When
wish
they
I
ask
could
you
have.
why, say because I can.
Well, and this is also, there is look, there is a role for, I mean, look, if some deadbeat dad or even, it happens on the other side
Oh
too.
yeah, it's
If
happening
there's
to
real
all of us.
abuse, if
Hmm.
there's real abuse going on and someone's really hurt and somebody's shot. I mean, there's a case right before mine where someone was shooting live rounds into the home. Okay, yes, that needs to be adjudicated on. That needs some justice. I mean, I would
Hmm.
argue it probably could happen in criminal court. It doesn't need to be in the domestic violence court. But when our case is really nice because there was none of that. Okay, this was a 20-year marriage, and all you had was testimony, no witnesses, and a picture that looked like a mosquito bite and a second picture that was dated wrong. In other words, that it was told to be, something that happened 18 months ago, and it actually was taken 2 days before the hearing. So, our case is great because it has so much good foundation. The topic of my faith came up repeatedly,
Oh,
repeatedly. Did you talk about deliverance in your household? Did you have deliverance prayers in your household? You know, did you, talk to your wife about deliverance? I'm like, hey, you know, yes, I did. I mean, I'm a Christian author. I
hmm.
am a Bible believing, you know, husband. We've been to 800 church services together. Yes, we talk about our faith. And so I owned it from the beginning, which is this is who I am. I have a constitutional right to express my faith. I have a constitutional right, and you have to own it. Own who you are. And what was interesting is, Maryann, today we were on our third day of trial, and you mentioned the front end that you watched some of that.
Hmm.
And I think if you know who you are, okay, I'm a citizen of heaven. Okay, I
Hmm.
know from my Bible, my name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. It's also written as a citizen of heaven. I am also a Texan, but my citizenship in heaven is first.
Hmm.
My Texan, being a citizen of Texas state is second. Well, my goodness, I know who I am in Christ. And so going into these hearings, you can't be afraid. You just have to know who you are.
Hmm.
And we did 3 days of hearings. And so when they started to say to me, Benjamin, we think you need your head examined
Oh.
because you believe in demons, okay, which is actually what happened. They ordered a mental exam on me and quoted as part of it my faith and my belief in demons. Well, I said, you know what? And it was actually Tony who recommended it. He's like, well, why don't you get an expert witness on demons? And so today we actually had, an exorcist for the DC diocese. Monsignor Pope showed up on the stand as our expert witness on demonology, angels and demons. And another allegation was that I believe in the resurrection of the dead. Okay. And because of that, I need a mental exam. Well, this is how, this is how removed these court systems are from the heartland of America and from the Constitution. And I even said to my judge one day, her name is Judge DeMayo. I said, you know, the highest law in the land is the Constitution, and I encourage you to read it. What I'm finding out is the lawyers haven't read the Constitution, and neither have the judges. And so sometimes when we come in and know the Constitution and know our rights, they look at us like a cow at a new gate because they don't
Hmm.
know the Constitution. But we know that's the highest law in the land, and we're in the right, and they're in the wrong with all this created mess like intra-family offenses and warrantless searches and warrantless seizures and casting away your seizing your arms without even any indication of violence related to your arms. And so Tony calls them victimless crimes, right? I mean,
Hmm.
this whole language and system, it's based on it's created out of thin air, Tony, wouldn't you say?
Yep. You have to have a first-hand material fact witness who's willing to swear that in an affidavit. And if it's just your word against somebody else's word, then you need a supporting affidavit. So you can't do he said, she said constitutionally, but the family courts, they've turned this into a multi-billion-dollar business. So some people, I don't know if you're aware of the QSIP bonds that are created by these cases,
Hmm.
and that Benjamin actually did a forensic audit and got some of the QSIP numbers on these cases. And so we're also we have a federal lawsuit challenging a constitutional challenge for the best interest doctrine of the child as applied to his case. And we're also going to do a provision under the Tucker Act, which is for the just compensation clause under the Fifth Amendment. You can't take that which is private, use it for public without giving that individual just compensation. So they take your signature as soon as you sign your documents, and they give you a case number. Now they attach a bond for that, and it's a performance bond. The longer the bond is on the market, the more money they make on the back end. I
Hmm.
think this is one of the reasons why Jesus flipped the tables over on the money changers. You
Right.
can't financially traffic the children of God. They're financial. It's human trafficking, part B. Domestic violence. They're the domesticated violence, because domestic violent what meant according to the Constitution. Even the military, they swear an oath against foreign and domestic enemies. So when we're
Hmm.
talking initially from the founding fathers in the original documents, domestic violence is someone domestically working for the government committing violence against the citizens. And so
Yeah, they
that's,
twist it around.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like everything else. They want to change the words of everything. The devil's in the details, and
Right. And I thought they weren't supposed to mix church and state. What happened to that?
Well, that's really what it, the issue you have is that, um, you know, they turned around the mental exam into, instead of what the Constitution says is the parent is presumed to be fit.
Hmm.
Okay. And in my case, they turn it around and said, you're presumed to be unfit. You've got to go prove you're fit. Okay. So in other words, it's a complete reversal. So just by filing a motion and saying, my husband believes in demons, and he's not so sure about the JAB,
Hmm.
and he likes to eat organic food,
Oh.
all this stuff that's not, quote, mainstream liberalism in DC, knowing full well knowing that we're in a liberal court with a liberal judge,
Hmm.
knowing those are some buzzwords, all of a sudden, boom, okay, there
Hmm.
is a order for a mental exam, and they call it the R35 mental exam. And I know you're very familiar with it, Maryann, but what's interesting about this one is the day that Tony and I filed, okay, a federal lawsuit against the District of Columbia, Judge John McCabe Jr., and attorney Gregory Nugent, okay? The
Hmm.
day that the District of Columbia, the Superior Court, Family Court, found out about it, within 6 hours, that court said, we're ordering you, Benjamin Thomas, to get a mental exam. And by the way, the person doing the mental exam is an employee of the District of Columbia. So a
Hmm.
complete conflict of interest. Basically, I'm suing the District of Columbia for millions of dollars, and the District of Columbia gets to do a mental exam on me and declare whether I'm mentally fit or not, as not only as a parent, but as a witness in the court case. So that's how corrupt and disgusting and absolute, you know, terrible this system is. Well, at first, I mean, you were there, Tony. At first, I'm like, I can't believe this just happened.
Oh.
And as I went home, Maryann, I just really prayed about this. And the Lord said, you know, after a while, I prayed. I said, Lord, I really don't want to do a mental exam.
Oh. Yeah.
And, I talk to God all the time. And, You mentioned it earlier. I'm an author of prophetic set of books and all that. And you know what the Lord told me? He said, I don't blame you, Benjamin. He said, I didn't want to do the mental exam either, nor did I. If you go back to
Hmm.
Mark chapter 3, okay, the Jesus' own family, okay, was saying he's insane, and it says they attempted to seize him and take custody of him.
Hmm.
Well, he didn't get the exam, did he? He walked away from that and said, and then he was in a meeting, and they rudely interrupted his meeting and said, "Oh, your family's waiting for you outside. Your mother, your sisters and brothers, they want to talk to you." Right after it said they tried to seize him and take custody of him, and they were saying, quote, he's insane. Okay. Well, what did Jesus do? He disowned them right there, and he said, who's my mother, my sister, my brothers? Those that do the will of the Father and follow what I say. Well, he didn't do the mental exam because he knew it was a he knew, I'm trying to think of the word I'm not supposed to say. He knew the system was stacked against him, and he
Hmm.
refused to walk into a trap that he knew about. And I knew this mental exam was a trap. TRAP.
Oh, yes.
So, I just decided I'm not going to do it. But man, Maryann, what a fight. I mean, how many times did we fight this, Tony? I mean, six? Was it 5 or 6 times? We fought like crazy against this mental exam because we knew it was a trap. But at the same
Hmm.
time, the court wouldn't take no for an answer. Every time we'd appeal it or this or that, they're like, no, 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 you're doing it. You're doing it. And finally, I'm like, I'm not doing it. I refuse. I file a conscientious objection according to my faith. I
Hmm.
do not allow myself as a believer to be scrutinized by you, the court system, in a set of values that I don't share.
Right.
And I'm just not doing it. And up until the last minute, they threatened sanctions. I mean, remember that, Tony? They were like, well, we could hold you in contempt of court. We could do this. And people were saying, oh, you could get arrested, all this stuff. And I'm like,
Right.
you know what? If I get arrested, it'll even be a bigger story.
Right.
And guess what happened? They finally said, you know what? He's not going to do it. We're gonna back off of that one. So,
Wow.
part of this is a game of chicken.
Right. In fact, I had a guest on, Justin McPhail, and he had been in prison for 6 years for not doing the mental health exam.
Prison. Did you say
Yeah.
prison? Which
Yes.
state?
Missouri.
Oh my gosh. Missouri owes him a lot of money.
Oh, I would
Woo!
say so.
They probably owe him $100 million at this point. He should sue the heck out of them.
Hmm.
When I started, when I think it was 2012 when I went to my first constitutional seminar, and as I started listening to truth, it hit my spirit. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm living like one of the slaves, one of the servants, and I'm the master and keeper of the Constitution. Um,
Hmm.
all of a sudden, I understood who I am as one of we the people, my identity. To me, I call it being born again as a citizen.
Hmm.
I've had my identity as a son of God, as a believer. Then all of a sudden, wait a minute, I have a seat of authority here in the earth. I'm one of we the people, according to our laws here, to the supreme law of the land. And I stood up on the inside, and I don't think I've ever sat down. Once you get it and it clicks, you will stand up and you will not sit down. And so I started studying Section 1983, the federal lawsuit. And, I had to do it old school. We didn't have AI back then. I had to buy the big, thick Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It's
Hmm.
O'Connor's Rules of Civil Procedure, which it has all that stuff in it. You got to study the local rules as well. And I went to a class that was a week long, 40-hour class out in Las Vegas. And it was amazing because there was several hundred people there. And now that we have AI, you could basically take your affidavit if you know how to write a correct affidavit and get all your facts down, and you type that into AI. There's two elements that you need to meet in the Section 1983. Did somebody act under color of law? And we know what color of law is. That's your Article 1 court where it's not the law, it's color of law, and they deprive you of your constitutional rights. So they're following this Roman civil code. and they're ignoring the Constitution. And so once you have those two elements and you sue in federal court, then you have a cause of action, and then you have to get past the 12b6 rule when these judges want to throw your case out. So when you're going pro se or sui juris, pro
Hmm.
per, however you want to frame that, um, it's an uphill battle.
Right.
I'm actually filed papers in Congress here in D.C. With the Secretary of the Senate to impeach a federal judge over there in Idaho, Judge
Yeah.
Windmill, because this guy has a pattern of behavior of throwing people's cases out without ever giving them any due process or opportunity to be heard. And so, be ready to appeal. I mean, when you're dancing with a gorilla, when the dance ends, when the gorilla says so, you go on offense and you grab these people and you sue them in their personal capacity, because when they're standing behind the agency, well, I work for the IRS, or I work for the family court, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a federal judge. You put your pants on one leg at a time, okay?
Hmm.
You swear an oath to uphold my rights, and I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. And we need to hold these people accountable. I've taken close to 40 people through the federal courts as a court coach and an educator, and not one time did when somebody lose where they sued for attorney fees. Because first of all, I won't coach anybody that's going to bring a frivolous lawsuit, number
Right.
one. And so, because they're using your own tax dollars against you to fight you, it's kind of hard for them to make a case that they're going to sue you for attorney fees. But they threaten that, and like Benjamin did, he stood up against it. No, I'm not taking that mental evaluation. And I think because he was on offense, I think that's why they backed
I
off.
think that's right. I don't think if I had not sued and put like you said, Tony, like you recommended, put the judge on defense, put the court on defense, called it out immediately. I mean, in other words, as soon as they ordered that mental exam, we were drafting a full court press, injunction in federal court, calling it all out. Hey, Judge DeMayo just ordered a mental exam on me 6 hours after she found out that I'm suing the District of Columbia. And, oh, by the way, she wants to use a district employee to do the exam. We were just putting it in paper, filing it away, letting people know, hey, we're not. And I think we had that filed in what, a week?
Yeah, we
It
we
was like
filed a lot of
a
paper.
week. So you just have to be on offense. And you know what? And we also put in the lawsuit, hey, it's not just the judge, it's not just the District of Columbia and Judge McCabe Jr., John McCabe Jr., and Gregory Nugent, the attorney. It's Doe's 1 through 10. In other words, we're going to be adding more people to this lawsuit. Would you like to be on that list too? And so I think that's part of it, is just not backing down, not being afraid. And, did part of me get concerned about, am I going to see my boys again? Yes, part of me, is fear. Fear tried to come in, but as I prayed about it, and I really got, in my prayer closet, I felt the Lord saying, and we talked about this a little bit, Marianne, before. It's like, this is the time to fight. I want my children to fight because, if you look at the Bible, whether it's the lepers that were walking toward the Sumerian siege, or, Moses, putting his foot in the water at the Red Sea, or, Joshua marching around, the walls of Jericho. God always wants us to take that step of faith and
Mm.
say, okay, Lord, I don't really know everything here, but I know that you want me to step out and fight this because this is wrong. And just trust him that he'll send his angels to help you. He'll encourage you. He'll bring people around you to pray for you, and he'll give you the strength. And there were some days in this whole
Mm.
situation, man, I'd wake up and I'd just be like, man, what am I doing? And I really feel like we have to know also how to pray for warrior strength. I don't care what kind of warrior you are, you're going to get weary. You're going to get tired some
Mhm.
days. You're going to get, discouraged. I mean, gosh, hearing your story, Marianne, you've been at this a long time. I mean, how many years has this been now, this fight for you?
Well, the podcast started in 2020, Slam the Gavel, but my issue started actually back in 2012 and actually back in 2011 when I remarried because we had co-parented well for 10 years. But it's okay for him to get married, but not me. So
Yeah. So a
this
long
is,
time, right? And so, you get weary and you just have to
mhm,
go to God and say, Lord, I need warrior strength for this. I really need you to give me the strength I need to keep fighting. And he will. And I really feel like there's divine protection right now. Um, I mean, gosh, we're in DC, which I mean, they've knocked off a lot of people here, right?
mhm,
And it's like, okay, we're going right into the heart of it all, fighting these people, with lawsuits and everything else. I've never felt safer. I feel like when you're on God's team and you're fighting and you know how to, pray for protection and you know that the angels of God are going with you, it's
mhm.
just a really sacred and wonderful place to be right now. And it just requires a little bit of courage, and if everybody stood up at once, this would be over tomorrow.
Oh,
I mean, if
definitely.
everybody stood up and said, I'm sorry, I'm not taking it, and you're violating my rights, and every Bill of Rights violation is $250,000, and every section, it was at 1983 is half a million, whatever the
It's
formula is.
18 USC 3571, which is codified public law.
Mhm,
And so even though it's under the criminal code, it's still the pay scale of felony perjury of your oath of office.
mhm,
What is that? And then what's that worth?
Well, that's at $250,000
Okay.
per violation. And then the municipality under the same code is $500,000
So right there,
sure.
everybody has almost an automatic
million.
million to $2 million claim. Everybody that's had their civil due process violated,
Mhm.
automatic $2 million claim, let's call it, rounded up. And I think this next lawsuit will be, for us, will be what, 30, probably 20, 30 million, right?
And because of your action,
Right, right.
he
Right.
created a conflict of interest. When you sue the judge can't preside on the case.
Mhm.
And not only did he sue the judge, he sued the opposing lawyer for some of the violations. We don't want to divulge our full strategy because we're still in litigation over this, but the lawyer stayed on the case, even though he's being sued in federal court. He's continually, attacking Benjamin's faith. So
Oh.
I guess he's the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, we just call it the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, these people are so arrogant.
Oh yeah.
They're so arrogant. They just think that nothing can touch them. Um, I remember we were trying to serve this judge, and it's like he was running away from our service guy, who's like an ex-cop here in the DC, DC.
We call the Manila, we call him the Manila Gorilla because he has the Manila envelope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm talking to my guy, and I was like, hey, he's like, well, who do you want to serve? And I told him, he goes, I can't wait to serve that guy. He kicked me out of a courtroom for chewing gum one time. He's like, yeah,
Oh,
I'm looking forward to that. Well, he's chasing this guy all over the place, and all the clerks are talking about it, and these guys aren't used to that. They're not used to looking over their shoulder. Am I going to get served? On a lawsuit.
Mhm.
They're getting a taste of their own medicine now. They've been, you know, absolutely splitting families up and taking kids away and just having immunity for everything they want to do. If we turn it around and just go after them, and like Tony said, with the tools these days, it's just gotten so much easier than it used to
much
be.
easier.
Right.
So
Yeah, it used to take 40 to 50 to 60 hours just to get the ball rolling. And now it could be, if you're educated, you could do it in 20 hours.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're coached up and you know how to put the right prompts, AI. I was afraid of AI, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, it kind
How do
of
you
sounds
trust
like
it?
a
Yeah.
believer. Kind of sounds demonic. Do I want to open up a door to that to infiltrate my life and my computer, get my private information? And I always tell my students, don't ever call me for help the day before a deadline because my schedule's always packed. And one
Yep.
of my students called. He had a great case, but he grew wary. And that's another thing. You got to count the cost and gather people around you. Don't try to do this yourself.
yeah.
Get support. Get a legal team together. But this individual called me and he's like, "Can you do this objection to the this 12B6 motion?" Which is it's a lot of time to do that, to object to that motion, and it could be even longer than your original complaint. But anyways, I says no. He goes, "Well, what can I do?" I says, "Well, you better ask for an extension of time." And he said, "Well, can you write that for me?" And I says, "No, I'm buried. I'm going to be working all night anyways, outside of your stuff. Figure it out." So, and we're text messaging. Like 7 minutes later, I get this check your email text. Is this okay? I open up the email. It's a perfect motion to extend time within like less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, who did you find out to do this? I mean, who did you find last minute? Some look lawyer quality to me. Call him up. Hey, bro, who did that motion for you? He goes, oh, I just typed the information up in AI,
Yeah.
and it put it together. So my recommendation is upgrade from the free version, pay the extra money, the extra $20 a month, and get Chat GPT 5 or one of the other AIs. I think Gronk is pretty good, I think.
I've
And
heard that
there's
too.
there's a couple other that I heard good things about. But yeah, so it's a lot easier, but do not try to do this on your own. You have to educate yourself, before you go into the field of battle, be equipped and make sure you're not running by yourself.
Yeah.
Right, right. My friend Alicia Walker, who's been in the last three books of these Raised by These Wolves, she has done her own case as a sui juris party, and she also talked about the QSIP there too. So there's a lot of people that are on this. They're onto this.
You know, the evil and the book of Revelation talks about the whore of Babylon. And one of the things that the whore of Babylon does is one of the things modern day Babylon
Mhm.
does is it says it trades in the souls of men, right? And so this human trafficking that's happening to all of us, we've been slaves our whole life. We were born into slavery just a few days after we were born. You
Mhm.
know, this has been happening our whole life. And so we're all starting to kind of break free, like Neo in the Matrix, right? We're starting to break free and pull these things off of our body. And I think when you start to realize you're a citizen of heaven, you've been in slavery willingly. You've signed over your rights willingly. And all you got to do now is just stop doing it
Mhm.
and stand up because you're the one that, like Tony said, we're one of we the people. We're the ones in charge, not them. It's just a change of mentality. And so, but I think that, when we start talking about fighting your own battles and your own cases, um, I think it's one of the things we like to do is we see three elements in the family court that we need to smash. One is jurisdiction. The second is the um, unconstitutional civil protection order where somebody can go with no witnesses, no evidence,
Mhm.
and throw you out of your own house. And the third is this ridiculous mental exam. What a crock that is. We had dinner with an attorney tonight, and they were like, it's just become standard practice. You know, you are telling a judge, I'm not doing it. And they're like, why aren't you doing it? Everybody does it. Well, see, that's the problem. We put up with it. We just assume the judge tells you you have to do it. You have to do it. Why not just say, no, I'm not doing it. And here's why. But as to Tony's point, what we're trying to do is build a toolkit so other people can not just fight, but fight to win. And
Mhm.
I don't like to fight and lose. I hate losing. So I plan to be in this fight to win. And as we win, we want to share these strategies, these templates, these ideas with other people and say, here's how you can win. I just beat the R35 mental exam. Was it a pain in the, you know what? Yes,
Yeah.
it was. But I'm not in jail, right? And
Right.
and we just, finished 3 days of trial. Nobody went and picked me up and threw me in the clinker.
Mhm.
Okay. And not only that, I was able to defend myself against the basis of it, which is my faith, by having my own expert witness in the courtroom talking about uh, faith. And the funny thing is, One of the allegations was in the case is that I'm crazy and I need a mental exam because I believe in the resurrection of the dead in the last days.
Mhm.
Well, they sensationalize it. He believes aborted babies are coming back to life. He believes miscarried babies are coming back to life. Well, they're also dead, okay?
Mhm.
And so we were having to try to prepare. Well, how do you defend against that? Well, we were able to find a Catholic priest in D.C.,
Great,
Monsignor Pope. He was
great man.
amazing. He had his robe on him, and he was excited. He shows up in court today, and the look on his face when my attorney's like, "Well, do you believe in the resurrection?"
Of the dead.
And he almost like his eyes got real wide. He's like, believe in it. We confess that every weekend. Like,
Yeah.
like what are you talking about? Like he's like, that's the fundamental of our whole faith. Meanwhile, but it was so refreshing in that courtroom because the air shifted from, we're crazy to no, you're crazy. Like you're in this cocoon bubble, you know, whatever. And the rest of America, this is how we believe. We believe the words of Jesus when he said the dead will rise one day.
Mhm.
That's in the Bible. And they kept saying, you're a little bit familiar with my writings, Maryann, but
Mhm.
I've written 3 books, bestsellers on Revelation. It's called Revelation Riddle, and it's a trilogy. And
Mhm.
they were saying, well, have you written about aborted babies coming back to life and miscarried children coming back to life? And I said, yeah, but I didn't write that. I'm like, what do you mean? I said, I'm quoting the Bible. I'm quoting the words of Jesus. Okay,
Mhm.
I didn't write the book of Revelation. I
Mhm.
provided my interpretation, but that was in place long before I showed up. And
Yeah.
oh, by the way, billions of other people believe it. So you're the minority, not me. And so you got to turn it around. And then I sued the attorney for trying to squelch, okay, my First Amendment rights and my free exercise of my faith. That is constitutional violation. Now, the only
Mhm.
thing that's happened so far is I'm sure the premiums on his malpractice insurance have gone up because his insurance companies now had to hire a legal team to represent him in a federal case, which is expensive. So next year,
Mhm.
his insurance will be higher. But we're going to keep
Oh,
going. It's going to be a lot worse than that soon. But my point is, you got to fight back and just own who you are.
right.
We're citizens of heaven. We're in charge, not them, and just own it. Not, in the beginning, I kind of was like, oh, I don't want to go there because I don't want to be like this, seen as this, whatever, and I'm like, no, you know what? That's who I am. And actually, that's protected free speech. That's protected expression of my faith. That's actually the highest law in the land, not this other stuff. That's the highest law. And so, one of the things we're doing right now, Maryann, is we've set up a campaign called Give, Send, Go
Mhm.
slash Save the Family. And what we want to do is quickly get these tools out there and these winning techniques so other people can win. Okay.
Mhm.
We just won, I think, a partial victory against the mental exam. And Tony's got American Common Law Academy. I'm hoping we can raise $1 million to fund, staff and teams and office space and stuff to help people fight their battles
Mhm.
around. And that would be just amazing if we could actually build a support team for all these cases around the country to actually get help and fight back, but fight to win.
And you know this as well. If you know somebody that's going to be in court, we need court watchers. Just like you showed up on the screen, they kept on going. Do you know this person?
Yeah, they were trying to figure it out.
They know they're being watched. Are they being watched by a federal auditor? I call myself an independent civil rights investigator. I'm independent, just like citizen journalism. And so we need to pack these courtrooms and get on these Zooms and let these judges know that we're
We're
watching
watching.
you, Mr. Public Servant. You are enriched, benefited, and rewarded by the taxpayers' money to uphold your oath of office. And now you're the one who's committing domestic violence against a Republican form of government
Mhm.
by charging the innocent for domestic violence. It's complete hypocrisy, and we need to file criminal charges as well. There's a federal form called AO 98, and it's a criminal complaint, and we need to do this. We're going to be doing a remonstrance, a petition of remonstrance, where I use the remonstrance out in California for AB 957, which is transgender affirmation. Okay,
Mhm.
I didn't have a bunch of funding for this. I don't have kids, but when they're going to cut the penis off a 12-year-old or the breast off a 12-year-old woman, um, because they can. I mean, I had had enough of that. So I filed a remonstrance which stopped that legislation. And actually, it passed, but I put my federal lawsuit in that petition of remonstrance.
Mhm.
And Gavin Newsom, he actually vetoed the bill in his press release. He said that it will not survive the federal lawsuit because my federal lawsuit was airtight, that I delivered certified mail to 30 senators in California. What a mess in California.
Oh,
They're
yes.
all domestic terrorists over there. Um, and so what I'm saying is one person can make a difference. I've changed policy over at my local court when people were defending traffic tickets. You're defending a traffic ticket. They want you to pay $180 to file the fee. Well, who brought me in here? I'm not filing the fee. And when the clerk's like, I'm not taking your paperwork, I'm like, how do you spell your last name? Well, I'm not giving you my name. What do you need my name for? I'm going to pull your oath of office. What's an oath of office, sir? I'm like, if you don't have an oath of office, you're committing you're impersonating a public official, number one. And if you do have an oath of office, you're committing felony perjury of that oath because you're denying my Fifth Amendment right of due process to be able to
Mhm.
put my paperwork, opportunity to be heard. And so that really disarmed them quickly. And so you go on offense, you get a little bit educated. Like I says, we want to go around. I'd love to travel around the country and do live tours too, because it's something that happens when we come together in person too. We've gotten accustomed to Zoom because of all this lockdown stuff, but you get an impartation. Even the Bible says, "Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves." There's a synergy and camaraderie when you get around the same type of like-minded people, and we encourage one another. And there's an impartation of boldness, especially when you, the individual, stand up in your community. You know what? Boldness is contagious. So let's stand up against this stuff. Let's pack these courtrooms. Let's get on these Zooms. Join the movement because it is swelling majorly.
Mhm. And what I'd also like to see is this silver bullet tactic that's used over and over, even in my case, where people can think they can just tell a lie on you, and you're going to pay dearly for that lie. You're going to lose everything based on a lie, and they walk scot-free out of that courtroom like nothing happened.
Well, and that is that's really that's why I think that the civil protection order and the perjury has to stop. It's like that you can just tell when you start talking about perjury and lying in these courtrooms,
Hmm.
they kind of roll their eyes like, oh yeah, everybody lies. Who cares? Well, God cares, right? And when you start talking about your son or your daughter depriving them of their father or their mother because of a lie, that
Hmm.
doesn't, you don't get away with that. You don't get away with that. And, I remember in my own case having just dealing with these lie after lie after lie. And I'm like, Lord,
Hmm.
how do I defend against someone that's going to lie all the time? And I think the Lord showed me that, I am a loving God, I'm a gracious God. And, it's hard to understand my mercy sometimes because he's really trying to woo those other people to do the right thing and come in. But the Lord has a limit. And so, you know, he will give someone an opportunity over and over and over again, but then all of a sudden one day it's over. And we
Hmm.
talked about that earlier. I really feel like prophetically, the next thing to happen across the world is what we call the death angel. Whereas,
Mhm.
Babylon in Revelation 18 says we'll fall in 1 day and 1 hour. And I don't think it's a good time for people to be pushing the limit right now
Mhm.
because, justice is coming. Justice is coming and it's coming quickly. And I think for a lot of these judges and a lot of these people, it's their last chance to repent and to start doing the right thing. And
Mhm.
you saw Maryann in California, those 6 judges get recalled. You know, we're suing a judge here in DC, more to come probably. And it's right now, it's just the gates are opening up. And I think that's just indicative of the justice that's right on the horizon. And now's this, we're the winning team. Maryann, what
Mhm.
you're doing is the winning team. What we're doing, we're on the winning team. We're not on the losing team. We've already won this battle. And so
Mhm.
get involved with what God is doing and fight.
And that's our slogan, don't be a victim, be a history maker. Because we've all been victimized, but there comes a point where you draw a line in the sand. And where did the law start? Ecclesiastical law was the birth of law, the law of Moses. You look in the book of Deuteronomy, it talks about the law. And we're taught, I was taught as a young believer sitting in church that, Romans 12, Tony says that obey those who are in authority. Well, we're not under Roman occupied Jerusalem in Jesus' time. We are in America, the United States of America, the Republic. And in this Republic, we have a constitution. And because we, the people, are the authority, we give limited delegated authority in lieu of an oath of office to
Mhm.
support that. You can't support an oath of office and attack it at the same time. And that's Supreme Court over and over again. And getting back to the Apostle Paul, I always thought, well, I'm just going to consent and submit to those authority. I didn't understand who I was. I sit in heavenly places and with Christ Jesus. In the book of Ephesians, that's where we pray. We legislate from the heavenly realms. We have a seat of authority. It's not some mystical, magical formula. Christ gives us authority. And so we're legislating in a spiritual realm. When we pray, we know prayer works. And so take your seat of authority in the earth. And that's what the Apostle Paul did. He's preaching about Jesus. And they have these illegitimate courts that were
Right.
not the supreme law. Rome was the supreme ruler in that day, just like the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And the Apostle Paul, they drag him down to the synagogue and they want to kill the guy. And he's
Mhm.
going, guess what? I object to your jurisdiction of this court. I appeal to Caesar. I am a citizen of Rome.
Mhm.
Okay. And so I don't like claiming the US citizenship because that's a corporation. I'm an American citizen who is one of the people. And we're starting to see the Ninth Circuit and we're starting to see the Supreme Court, like in Bruin for Second Amendment protected rights, that they're starting to change the language. You know,
Mhm.
we're not persons, we're people. We don't carry firearms. We bear arms. The right to keep and bear arms. Firearms is a commercial term. So it's the devil is in the detail. They're using this legalese and this code to get us to
Yeah.
submit to things that we have authority over. As a believer in Christ, we're talking about the Bible a lot, but it's the same principles that are going into the court. You don't have to consent that. If the demon knocks on my door, says, "Hey Tony, knock, knock, knock. I'm depression. Can I come in your house today?" I'm going to go, "No, you have no jurisdiction over me. Do you have a warrant? Have I
Mhm.
given you,
Mhm.
have I injured someone to open up the door for you to depress me? No, hit the
Mhm.
bricks." And,
Amen.
and we don't consent to illegitimate laws and to illegitimate authorities.
Amen. Amen.
Exactly. And I see a lot of parents losing their faith. And I always try to encourage people to try not to lose your faith because in my case, I had a judge that would not recuse himself. Judge Robert Sambrook refused to recuse himself, saying that he knew this case better than any other judge, even though it was only day one of trial. Okay,
Uh,
so I said, I gave it to God. I said, okay, he's not going to recuse. God, you deal with him. And we just kept going. And I just would just say that prayer, once a day or once, every couple days. And so that was on March 2nd of 2015. He removed my boys from my care, because I'm so dangerous, right? As a registered nurse. Okay. So I just kept praying. And wouldn't you know, on March 2nd of 2017, that judge died of pancreatitis and is now answering to a higher God.
Wow.
Amen.
So on the same day he removed my children, then he's answering to God. So I tell
Yeah.
parents, do not give up because there's other, God can do a lot of things very quickly.
And also take your case to the court of heaven. When my faith was made a mockery, right after I'd had my sons taken away from me in my home, in my arms, um, I went to the court of heaven with the case. This was January 30th, 2025. And I said, Lord, this is the highest court, not
Mm-hmm.
even higher than the Supreme Court. Take your case also first to the court of heaven and watch what God will do. And so this isn't over, but Maryann, this has just been such a wonderful time with you. I really enjoyed, hearing your story and can't wait to get into some of your books. And, this has been so cool.
Well, it was
And
great.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of the book in the book of Psalms. It says, "As better is one day in your courts than a thousand elsewhere." In the Bible, talking about the court of God, and he's not talking about the courtyard. He's talking about a heavenly court. And there is
Mm-hmm.
God created government, and He has a structure. And it says, "His throne, the foundation of His throne, is founded on righteousness and justice." So. Yes, we need to put our faith and trust in the Lord, but don't try to do this alone. We need encouragement. Do not isolate yourself. That's
Mm-hmm.
what these courts want to victimize you. They want you to be depressed. I mean, how many people have we lost to suicide in this movement? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and and
Mm-hmm.
and there will be a reckoning for it, but let's encourage one another. Let's
Right.
back people
Right.
up.
And now I'm going to also put in a trailer, a 1 minute, 20-second trailer uh, that I will put in the podcast notes and save the family. So I will also put that in there. And if parents want to reach you, how can they reach you, Ben Thomas? How can they reach you?
Uh, my website for my is revelationriddle.com,
Okay.
revelationriddle.com, and they can reach out and contact me on that website. And I've got my podcasts there and books and all that. And I haven't really this is kind of a battle I'm just now going public with, so I haven't really talked a whole lot about it on my website. But it's a test that soon will be a testimony.
And
Definitely.
you can email me my website. I'm redesigning my website right now, but it's an acronym for American Common Law Academy. It's ACLA at yahoo.com. It's not the ACLU, which stands for Antichrist Lovers Unite.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
ACLA at yahoo.com.
Yeah.
And I'll
And I
put
would
all of
encourage
that.
everybody, get on to Give, Send, Go,
Hmm.
save the family. If you can give anything, this is an incredibly expensive battle, but it's going to be worth every penny. We want to we're developing a winning strategy. We want to put those right out into use. I mean, I've been educating people on Telegram and other places on how to win these battles. And I think our case will be a template.
I think this is great. I'm glad we had this conversation. And it was good to see you in court. I mean, not in under those circumstances, but what are you going to do? But thank you so very much for coming on, but don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Benjamin Thomas and Tony Pellegrino, for coming on, and I really appreciate everything you said.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Maryann. That
Definitely.
was awesome. I feel
Yeah.
like we're going to have to keep I think like there's so much to share. We got to do this again.
Yeah. Let me know. Thank you.
Well, look, I think we could actually talk about like I feel like the R35 is already a victory. I mean, look, your friend's in jail, right? I
Well,
mean,
yeah, he's out now, thank God. But
Did
Terrible.
he, let me, did he sign, one, did he say he would do it and then not do it?
Mm-mm.
Or he just said, I'm not doing it.
Right, right.
And he wouldn't sign anything.
Right. He has a Substack article. He writes a bunch of articles too. Justin McPhail,
And how many
sorry.
years in jail was he?
6.
Wow. I mean, don't you think he should get that lawsuit filed
Well,
yesterday? But I'll be right back.
there's no statute of limitation on fraud. So,
Right.
you know, if especially where your injury is still sustained, it's irreparable injury. So,
Hmm.
yeah, we'd like to keep you updated. We'll have to keep in touch about the progress of the. Well, we're getting ready to file another federal lawsuit on the same case. So,
Oh,
all roads lead to federal court. We got to get out of these
yeah.
Article One courts and go to the big leads.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
be
Thank you
bold,
for,
stand up.
oh, yeah, this is great. I appreciate it. And I'll get this out to you. And thank you so much.
All right, have a good night.
You too.